Continuing our look at software, this video is a little geek heavy. We're going to take a look at something called the boot process. The boot process is what happens when you turn your computer on. This is how the computer starts up, and there are several steps that occur before you're able to interact with your computer as you normally would, as most users do. So once again, this is the boot process. In a nutshell, this is what occurs. You turn the power on. The power supply from previous videos and hardware, the power supply is going to check the power, and if the power is good, it's going to start something called the power good signal. It's going to send a power good signal to the CPU. The CPU then starts up and then hands off the process to something called the BIOS. The BIOS starts the post. The post will then do its thing, and when it's done, it will launch the Bootstrap Loader. That's the general process. Now we're going to get into this in a little more detail. Now here's my disclaimer. Depending on the class that you're teaching, you may have to go into the boot process in more detail or not enough detail. It's very much a balancing act in how deep into the pool you want to go, and you can find yourself on the deep end fairly quickly. Because this is an intro level course, we're going to skim over some of the more technical aspects. So if you are studying your A+ certification or a more advanced computer class, be aware that we're not getting into every little nuance that's part of the boot process. This is just supposed to be an overview. So with that being said, the first step of the boot process is called the power good. What occurs here is when you turn the computer on, the power supply is going to taste, that's good power. And it's going to make sure the electric is good, you have the proper voltage and all that good stuff. If the power supply determines that everything's cool and it's all good, it then will wake up the CPU. It's going to go, hey, wakey, wakey, and it will wake up the CPU. The CPU, remember that's the brains of the computer from the hardware section from the last videos. The CPU is then brought into the boot process. It's going to activate something known as the basic input-output system, the BIOS. Now, the thing you have to remember about the BIOS is that the BIOS is a very basic computer understanding of how hardware is supposed to work. It has very basic drives. All it knows is that, oh, you're the device. It doesn't care what type of device. It doesn't care what model of device. Just simply it goes, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. Kind of like people who aren't car people go, that's a car, that's a station wagon, that's a van, that's a truck. We really don't get into the make and model. Okay, so that's what the BIOS does. It doesn't care the make and model. It just goes, you're a truck, you're a van, we're good. The next step is the post. The BIOS is going to start the power on self-test, or what we call the post. Once the post gets going, the BIOS and the CMOS. The CMOS is a part of memory that goes, this is how the computer is configured. I left this here, this is here, this is here, and this is here. And the BIOS and the CMOS is going to go, okay, we should have a drive over here. We should have a device over here. Hey, we have a device over here. Okay, next we should have a device over there. Hey, we have a device over there. Next we should have a device up here. Hey, we have a device up there. And so the BIOS and the CMOS talk back and forth to make sure the parts are where they're supposed to be. They make sure what is actually is. The next step is we load drivers. Keep in mind, we're talking about very basic drivers. Again, it's this is a truck, this is a van, this is a car, kind of a driver. So this is the hard drive, this is the sound card, this is whatever. Very, very basic drivers here. 6, it will then start up the system bus. The BIOS will have the CPU send signals over the system bus to make sure all basic components are working. The system bus, we didn't really get into it in too much detail, is the highways and connections and lines to the components. It's the way information is sent all around the computer. Next, in step 7, the video is finally brought into the equation. At this point, everything is done without the user seeing anything. In step 7, the video shows up. Now, again, remember, these are very basic drivers. Drivers are what tells the computer how to work a device. It tells the computer, here's how you communicate with this device. And so, in the video portion, the computer gets the driver for the video. A very basic, this is a video. I don't care how much you spent on it. You might have a $2,000 video card. You might have a $5 video card. All I know is it's a video card. And this is how you talk to any video card. So the display is going to be very basic. It's going to be very low res. That's what you're going to see. Next, we have system memory. So now the post is going to write and read from the system RAM. If you are from the old school of computing, you might remember seeing on the top left portion of your computer a counter. It would just start adding numbers up together, and that was your system RAM. You would see how much RAM you had in your system. Step 9 is the handoff. The post hands off to a process called the Bootstrap Loader. The reason it's called a Bootstrap Loader comes from an old expression of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. In other words, you pick yourself up and you go. You pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get on with your life. The post is going to hand off to a Bootstrap Loader. This is the portion that's going to really start getting things going. And in step 10, what occurs is the Bootstrap Loader is going to load the operating system. This could be your Windows version that's getting started up. And then from there, it's all about the Windows or your Mac OS or whatever really kicking into gear. Like I said, that was pretty geek heavy. As a user, you really should have a basic understanding of how a computer starts up. Just not that it starts up magically. You know, there's no little elves inside your computer starting up things. But you should have a general idea of how your computer gets going. In our next video, we're going to take a look at the basics of operating systems.